Hey doctors, on this podcast I want to talk about my Luke Skywalker moment and going with the Force. So I want to tell you a little bit of a story. This is probably now 15 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, 12 to 15 years ago. I was invited by the top law firm in the state of Michigan, the defense law firm, to come and present on spinal ligament injuries. And when I got they wanted me to talk for 1 hour on spinal ligament injuries. And when I got the invitation, I kind of felt like I'm going to use some Star Wars references. If you don't know Star Wars, I'll try to make this make sense for you. But it was kind of like Darth Vader was, at the time I thought this, Darth Vader was inviting me to the Sith Lord conference. Like, what would I talk about with defense? Because we had a company, Spinal Kinetics, at the time called National Injury Diagnostics, later Spinal Kinetics, where we did testing to show more injury rates. And then I had always, in private practice, I had arrived at this conclusion that I was a win-win for everybody. So I was like, okay, no, this is a win-win. It's just an interesting, I've never been invited by the defense firms to talk about this. So I went out there, I went to Detroit, Michigan, to speak. And I only had 1 hour to talk. Now, who am I talking to? I'm talking to case managers. I'm talking to special investigation unit personnel. I'm talking to adjusters. I'm talking to IME providers. I'm talking to utilization reviewers. I'm talking to the insurance people and the defense attorneys. Probably, I don't know, maybe like 150 people in a room. And I'm there to talk about spinal ligament injuries. Now, you might say, you know, I would probably would be like you. I was like, how should I start this? And I'm like, well, wait a second. The highest majority of people that have any form of chronic pain, chronic low back pain, chronic neck pain, and chronic headaches are the number one, now today, number two, and the fourth leading cause of chronic pain and disability. They're most expensive conditions in the market today, bar none. So injuries are what cause that. And the Bone and Joint Decade study had come out and said 100 million Americans are suffering from some form of chronic pain. And when I looked at the statistics, 61% of those people, the chronic pain was spine related. So it was kind of became a no-brainer. I just came out and said, hey, I'm Dr. Kronk, excuse me. And what I want to say to you is, right now, if you have some form of chronic pain, chronic low back pain, chronic neck pain, or chronic headaches, I'm definitely talking to you, because the biggest problem that you have, and the reason why you still have a chronic problem with it, is you're not working with a doctor that understands the underlying causing condition. And that's a ligament injury. Now, did I have their attention? Yes. Do I know, based on that report, I know that 50% of the people in the room could have 50, and let's say it's only 40% of the people, right? So there's 40 or 50 people in the room that have some form of chronic pain, and I'm hitting the number one, number two, and number fourth leading cause, right? Then I did my talk on ligaments, which was really easy. I showed them, hey, there's 3 types of injuries to the spine. It's very simple. You can either break it or you have a connective tissue injury. There's 2 types of connective tissue injury. One is the one you're most familiar with, which is called a disc herniation. The other is an injury to the non-disc ligaments, which causes instability. It causes excessive motion. Just like when you have a disc herniation is determined, the severity and location of it is determined by MRI, but the severity is determined by how deranged is the disc. Is the disc just bulging? Is it herniated? Is it herniated pushing into the nerve? Is it herniated pushing into the cord? That determines the severity of the disc herniation. Same with a non-disc ligament injury. It's how much excessive motion. Is it a millimeter? Is it 2 millimeters? Is it 3 millimeters? Is it 4 millimeters? How much angulation? Is it 7 degrees? Is it 12 degrees? Is it 16 degrees? How much? So I did a simple talk and basically did a very simple talk on how you work this up. But the other thing I indicated was the struggle. I indicated their struggle. And boy, I tell you what, this is where I got so much mileage. Because I said, look, the problem that you have is if you go into a hospital ER room, the workup is different. If I go into an outpatient medical facility, that workup is different. If I go to individual doctors, the workup is different. And then I said, what if I go to a chiropractor? What if I go to 10 chiropractors? I said, how do you even get through this documentation when you look at 10 different chiropractors? The patient could go to 10 different offices and these workups are all different. And they all started laughing. Right? And I was like, oh, great. I knew I was onto this, because I want you to understand my purpose in this market and everything that I do is to standardize spinal injury workups. Spinal injury workups are simple. A person should have the same spinal injury workup doctor to doctor throughout the entire country, irregardless of what kind of doctor you are. Whether you're a chiropractor, whether you're a doctor of PT, whether you're a medical specialist, whether you're a GP or a medical specialist. It doesn't matter. The injuries are the same. That injury, if I have a bad burn and I happen to go to a chiropractor's office, the burn is the same. Now that might not be the right place to go for treatment-wise, but the injury is the same no matter what two letters the practitioner has behind their name. The injury is the same. And it needs to be standardized and it needs to be worked up. So obviously it taught me, hey, in my own profession, there's a lot to be achieved here with standardized documentation and standardized workups, right? So here's the thing, doctors. I showed them exactly what it was, what the injuries were, and it turned out to be the best presentation I've ever given. Now, why do I say that? Because I've given a lot of attorney presentations and a lot of doctors lectures, talks, seminars, webinars. Never had I had such a responsive audience of people coming up to me afterwards and saying, okay, how do I find a doctor? Now, who's coming up to me? The people who have chronic pain. They're coming up to me, how do I find a doctor? How do I find a doctor to do this test? At the time, I don't know that we had anybody in the state of Michigan at that time. I had a very small company that we were working with, so it was difficult. Like, okay, great, I don't have any doctors in this area to send you to, but I had so many people. Now, I also had this come up. At the time, Michigan had, I don't know what they have today, but they had unlimited coverage, right? So, obviously, when you have unlimited coverage, that means if you needed millions of dollars worth of care, there was no limit. So when you have that, sometimes you're going to have abuses, right? So I had I remember her, she was over like 22 states. I think she was special investigation unit over 21 states for auto owners insurance. And she said, Dr. Kronk, what happens when, like, I'm reviewing a bill and there's $40,000 to $50,000 worth of chiropractic coverage, and I don't know, it was like an ungodly short amount of time, 2.5 months. It was the largest bill I'd ever heard of, but I didn't hear the specifics. Was it all chiropractic? Was it medically integrated? I didn't know anything about it. She just approached me. We're in a group, we're standing around, and she says, what do you think about that? And I said, I think you have all the fraud and all the tools to handle that. I can't imagine that you couldn't handle that if the care wasn't necessary or if it's over. It sounds extensive to me, but I don't know the particulars, but you have all kinds of procedures to handle that. Can I ask you a question? She said, sure. I said, do doctors do good work in the market? Are there doctors that do good work in the market? I said, yeah, absolutely, we believe that. I said, well, how do you reward them? Blank look on her face. She didn't know what I was talking about. I said, in my experience, you treat those doctors all the same. You treat them all as if they're bad. Why is it that the insurance companies don't look at, you have the profiles, you have the treatment profiles, you know which providers get really good results and do it far more cost effectively than anybody else does, and you know based on the complaints with the patient and the patient's condition that they did a good job, whether they're a chiropractor, a pain management specialist, a surgeon, doesn't matter. Why do you treat them all as if they're bad? She didn't know what to say. I said, if you would work on a program where you start to reward the people that do good work, you're going to get a hell of a lot more good work. And so it kind of hit the thing off at the pass. But the bottom line is, I learned at that moment, one, I could go anywhere. And that a lot of times it's in your head when you have, like I said, I started this off by saying, hey, my Luke Skywalker moment, because I did feel a little bit like, hey, I'm Luke Skywalker going into the, Darth Vader and the Sith Lords, is it a trap? What do they really want to know? And what it really comes down to is they're human beings and they're connected to human beings, and they need to know more about what it is that they have and the simplicity of things. And when you can deliver that kind of content and you can deliver that kind of information, you are valuable to everyone in the market, and everyone becomes your friend. There is no antagonism in the market. It may come up, still comes up, but it's like it's not really there. They're just acting that way because they don't know you. They haven't clarified you out as something different than maybe somebody else that they've worked with before. So the bottom line is, I just want to tell that little story because I think it's interesting, and you might get some sort of a cognition or some sort of an insight from it. Doctors, as always, I just try to do a short little topic, short little talk on a topic. I hope you got something from this. If you want more information about our program called the Smart Injury Doctors Program, just look us up on the internet, www.smartinjurydoctors.com. Or if you want more information and you want additional educational type information, just go out to Facebook, look up Smart Injury Doctors Practice Building Success Network, and apply to that group. It's free, and we put additional information in that might be helpful to you. As always, I certainly appreciate your time and your attention, and I look forward to delivering more content to you on the next podcast. Thank you.